This is DW News Africa. Coming up on the program, why does a woman in Kenya lose her life simply for being a woman? And what will it take for the state to finally act? We're bringing you two families broken by femicide. Two families, but many battles for justice. First, a mother stabbed to death in front of her children, now orphaned and waiting for a verdict that could take years. And there's 10-year-old Mary Wambui, violated and killed by her neighbor her family trusted. It's taken 3 years to bring him to court. For her mother, the trial means reliving it all and living in fear for the children she has left. And finally, Kenya has no national database to count its femicide victims, but the women fighting to change that know every name by heart. We meet the activists demanding this crisis be declared what it is, a national emergency. I'm Michael Okwu. Welcome to the program. Globally, the United Nations estimates that every 10 minutes a woman or girl is killed because of her gender. The perpetrator is often an intimate partner or someone known to the victim. We're going to speak to my colleague Edith Kamani from Nairobi in a moment. She and her team have been exploring this troubling and difficult issue for the better part of a year, and she will guide us through this. Edith, it's good to see you, albeit under these circumstances. Looking at Kenya, the research collective Africa Data Hub reported on average more than 7 women were killed every month in 2025 because of their gender. Most of them were stabbed, and mostly by their husbands. In Kenya, ever more frequent reports of femicide have sparked a nationwide outcry. Women rights groups and families of victims took to the streets to demand that femicide be declared a national disaster. Edith and her colleagues met some of the families in search of justice and the people on the forefront in the battle against femicide and gender-based violence. Kenya has no national database on femicide, so we don't know exactly how many girls and women have died at the hands of men, and because of their gender. But we do know that Ununice Wanjiko is one of them. We should warn you that this and our other reports are distressing.
A family's pain tears through a funeral home in Kenya. At the center of the grief, 3 children. Their mother, Ununice Wanjiko, was stabbed to death 2 days before by their father in front of their eyes.
Young people have gotten out of control, and I know it's not only here, it's wherever you come from.
At 32, Ununice had been married for more than a decade. Her younger sister, Susan, says she was close to the couple. But she also knows the relationship was physically abusive. On the day her sister was murdered, Susan had spoken to both of them.
She used to call me. In fact, that week, Ununice called me to ask me to send her bus fare to come home. She had been beaten. It was on Sunday. She'd been chased from home. Her husband also called me and said, I have tried to fix this marriage with your sister, but she's not interested. I told him she's not interested because every time you drink, you beat her.
The exact details of what happened next aren't clear. The children reported that their dad locked them inside before stabbing Ununice. First in her chest and several times in her abdomen. Their neighbors forced their way into the house and found the children crying over their mother's body.
They sat there while everything was happening. They were locked in the house and they saw everything. The 3 of them just sat there.
The children's dad was taken into custody. Months after Eunice's funeral, her family's pain is still raw. Her children are under state custody at a children's home. Their grandmother is desperate to reunite them with the family. Although she has no financial means to support them, she still wants them close.
If I saw them, I'll be so happy, because when I see them, I see Eunice, especially in the youngest, who looks just like her.
Eunice's alleged killer is already in custody, but the case could drag on for years. For the family, justice would mean keeping him behind bars.
Eunice's story is just one of scores that happen on the continent every year. And for the better part of this entire past year, our Edith Kamani has been tracking that wider story, the women who've been killed by men, whether driven by misogyny, discrimination, or the desire to exert control. Edith, it's a sensitive, significant issue. It's why we're devoting this week's episode to it. But a whole year, why did it take so long for you to investigate femicides?
Well, it took us a whole year, Michael, because of one of the issues that you've mentioned there, the sensitivity around this topic. And so you can imagine it's not very easy to go to a family who've just lost their loved ones to ask that if you could bring cameras to their funeral. And so this took an incredible amount of time as we tried to convince the family that we got their Eunice. But at the same time, we didn't want to leave any questions unanswered. And so in the case of Eunice, we understood that after the funeral, it was just not possible for us to speak to them. And so we waited a couple of months after the family had processed what they had gone through, and that's when we were eventually able to go back to them. But other issues, including the legal process here in Kenya, which is very, very long. And so in order to wait for what the court has adjudicated, we also had to wait. And this is just one of the challenges of telling such stories.
It's been months since Eunice's funeral, and her family is still waiting for justice. Do they know when or if they will ever see it?
No, they don't. And the answer is not very promising. According to researchers, in major cities like Nairobi, the capital where I am, it takes on average 3 to 4 years for such cases to reach a resolution. Eunice and her family live in an area, or Eunice lived in an area that is not very suburban. And so it's very likely that this is just the beginning of what could be a very long journey towards trying to get justice for Eunice.
I can only imagine it is an agonizing wait. Why does it take so long?
It is really agonizing, and I can tell you that having spoken to these families. Now, why does it take long? Because the Kenyan justice system simply moves too slowly, as I had mentioned, and so there's just a backlog of cases. And with the courts not having any special courtrooms to adjudicate matters of femicide or sexual and gender-based violence, it means that these cases get caught up with other crimes and other matters that the courts have to see. At the same time, the issues of femicide often happen between two people. And these are cases that prosecutors must prove without a reasonable doubt have happened based on the hands of those people who've been accused. And this requires a lot of time and money. And rights groups have argued that the government simply is not dedicating enough money to these causes and these investigations, and also to families of survivors, including one who we met, Lena Kanywa, who is a widow who's seeking justice for her child against all odds. In March 2022, Lena found her 10-year-old daughter, Mary Wambui, in the worst imaginable state. Under a bed, in a pool of blood, and undressed from the waist. She understood immediately that her daughter had been defiled, but she could not have anticipated the full extent of the injuries.
Nilipata kisu.
I found my child had been stabbed with a knife. It went in here and came out on the other side. That's when I lost all my strength, and I just started stroking her. People tried to tell me to get up, but I just sat there on the chair by the bed from 4 p.m. until about 6 p.m. when the police came and took us out.
ndio askari walikuja, ndio sasa wakatutoa nje.
The alleged perpetrator was a trusted neighbor who lured the 10-year-old. Mary had been playing outside with other kids, and when she didn't come home, Lena went to look for her. Three years after her child's death, Lena finally takes a stand in court. The investigator presents evidence from the scene.
Are you able to see it now?
When Lena sees the accused and the murder weapon, it's more than she can bear.
On priority basis.
Nimemwona tu hivi.
I saw him and I felt, because I never imagined someone I had lived next to for 5 years could ever do this to me. I never imagined it. So seeing him there,
Nimemwona hapo. Hai.
This is just the beginning of the legal battle. While justice can keep the perpetrators imprisoned, financial empowerment can offer options for survivors of gender-based violence. For Lena, that means getting money to keep her other children safe during school holidays. Each week, she and other women supported by Usikimie meet for their table banking group.
So mimi nang'ang'ananga.
I work hard to raise money. Right now, I want to borrow money from the group to send the kids to my parents because I can't go to work and leave them home alone. I'm too scared.
Although Lena has Usikimie to support her legal costs, the accused's family has the means to hire lawyers and post bail if granted. Lena believes only a conviction can keep her family safe.
Edith, again, another agonizing wait for some resolution here. How's Lena been handling it?
Well, Lena is extremely tough, but underneath the toughness, you can tell that she's still in an incredible amount of pain. I mean, she did lose her child after all, but the family lost more than her child. Her other children, who are also young, have lost this childlike wonder that we all go through the world with as children, and that's because they saw what happened to their baby sister. Her other child, who's a little bit older, has been helping her to go to court. And so it's a very traumatic experience for her as well. Now, Lena did move her family from where they used to live, but she's left a community who are now very suspicious of their neighbors. Remember, this happened to her child, but it was a crime that was committed by her neighbor who they had known for 5 years. And so Lena, her family and the community have also lost an incredible sense of trust around especially men. And these are the invisible wounds that they have to heal slowly and by themselves.
Edith, we should mention data you've provided from the police shows that cases of defilement top the list of sexual offenses in Kenya. In December 2025, over 500 sexual offenses were reported to the Kenyan police. Of these, more than 400 were cases of defilement, a term I want to make clear, specific to the sexual abuse of minors. 72 were rapes of adult women. That same month, there were 3 recorded murders related to gender-based violence, what we call femicide. In these cases last December, men between 20 and 29 years old were the top offenders. So under Kenyan law, Edith, what happened to Mary is considered defilement and murder. The term femicide doesn't exist. Of course, we all know what homicide is. Why is it important to have this separate category of femicide?
This is a question that we asked the activists who we met as we were doing this story. And the top answer that they gave us was that naming this crime specifically as femicide reflects the broader issue of not just violence against women, but coercion against them and eventually domination. And the second answer they gave me is one that I've really been thinking about for a while, but I'd like you to hear it from the horse's mouth. Here are Ruth Bange and Jerry Migwi, 2 women who are at the center of fighting back against femicide in Kenya.
Stop killing women! Stop killing women! Stop killing women! Stop killing women!
2024 was the worst year for femicide in Kenya. Anger over the situation came to a head, and protesters flooded the streets to demand an end to femicide. On the front lines of the protest was Mary Wambui.
We need to speak up because it's happening so that there are laws that can be enacted.
Mary Wambui and Ruth Bange are the founders of Usikimye, a community-based organization supporting those worst affected by gender-based violence. Cases of violence and sexual abuse land at their doorstep in Soweto. With little to no government services in this low-income neighborhood, Usikimye shoulders a huge responsibility.
3 days ago, on our toll-free line, we received 60 cases a day, a single day. You know, so many people called in. We have people who are referring cases on our social media pages. Yeah, we do not have enough staff to handle this because of limited resources.
The government knows there's a problem. In 2025, the president appointed a task force to develop a national response to femicide and gender-based violence. The task force traveled across Kenya to hold town hall meetings where mostly women and some men gave their unfiltered perspectives.
Silence, victim blaming, and stigmatization.
If I went to the police, they would blame me. Why were you there? Why dress like that? Why out at that time?
Men feel that they should dominate over women. There is no punishment given to those who are caught maybe doing the rape. Now it gives them that power to continue mishandling the other gender.
After hearing the testimonies, the task force chair acknowledges ending gender-based violence is everyone's responsibility.
So at this point, we are to look at everything, including the family structure. Is it working or is it broken? We are looking at the role of culture and cultural norms. Are they contributing? We are looking at the role of social media in this whole area of GBV, including femicide.
The task force has since presented its findings to the president.
Your Excellency, we are requesting that you declare GBV, including femicide, a national crisis.
The key recommendations include recognizing femicide as a distinct crime, improving investigations, and strengthening survivor support. But Njeri from Usikimye is not convinced any of the proposals will be implemented.
You know what happens to those things that happen in Kenya when we have task forces? They go into a shelf somewhere and they die. The way we addressed COVID, very quick. I want to ask people, why don't we ever look at the murder of people with that rate? We don't. Because we don't see women as equal. We don't see them as deserving. We see this as a matter of, it's a private matter between two people.
Femicide refers to the killing of girls and women because of their gender. Kenyan rights groups want this language adapted into national law. Doing so, they argue, would address the deliberate and systemic violence women face.
All we are asking them is to declare femicide a distinct crime. And by saying we are asking femicide to be declared a distinct crime, we are asking for a very simple thing. Femicide can be measured. You cannot fund that which cannot be measured. We have numbers that we have taken from the cases that we have seen. So do other organizations, so does the government, but it is disaggregated and it is in silos. So we need a national database that can be able to measure what we are saying.
On another side of town, Usikimye wants the Kenyan public to finally take off its blinders. They've put the scenes of crimes that they're too often confronted with into an exhibition, and they're taking it around the country. The names of victims Usikimie know are everywhere in the room. A stark reminder of just how many lives have been lost.
If you ask me a name, I'll tell you their story. Because I know the families, I know the people. I've seen the bodies, I've seen the mutilations. And I need Kenyans to understand the gravity. I need people to understand that this is bad.
For those in attendance, the gravity of the crimes is sinking in. As part of the experience, the men are asked to become active allies in the fight.
End femicide now.
End femicide now.
You can count on me.
You can count on me.
It's a powerful pledge from the men in the room, but will it go beyond the exhibition? And is society ready to take up the fight?
Edith, as we heard in the report, the chairperson of the Femicide Task Force presented its findings to Kenyan President William Ruto. Have we heard a response from Ruto?
No, we have not, since the months when the report was presented to him. And actually, civil rights organizations have been complaining that there's been no movement on implementation. But most recently, the Kenya Ministry of Gender did launch a 90-day campaign, which they say is going to be targeted at communities who are worst affected by sexual and gender-based violence. So there was simply no mention of femicide here. But they're saying that this exercise is also going to be used to fast-track the 37 recommendations that the task force presented to the president. Whether or not this is going to happen is something that we'll have to wait and see. But on the ground, we notice that what the government is saying versus what is being done are simply two very different things. In this country of Kenya, every single police station is supposed to have a gender office with a gender officer. Now, while there might be gender officers, the desk itself is sometimes simply just a desk. I've interviewed people who've told me that they've gone to report cases of defilement, and what happens is the child who is the victim is often placed in a police cell, not because they're guilty of anything, but because there is no infrastructure where this child can be kept and comfortably interviewed. And so these are some of the challenges when it comes to what the government is promising versus what is actually being done.
Edith, it's a dark question, but I can't help watch these reports and ask, has femicide become normalized?
As a woman, I certainly hope that the murder of women and girls has not become normalized. But what we are seeing is that the response to it, which is usually quite slow, is what has become normalized. Here in Kenya, we have a law society and also the Kenya Human Rights Commission. And they're both reporting that in most cases, women who end up being victims either report early or they ask for help. And they're usually encouraged to look for more informal ways of resolving these disputes, either going the family route or asking elders in the community to resolve these disputes. Police officers we've spoken to while doing this report have also admitted that there's a huge trust deficit between the people who are policed and those who are police officers. And so more often than not, people simply don't report what has happened to them. And the neighbors are also complicit in this. As we were interviewing people about the story on Lena, the neighbors did admit that they had heard them fighting, but they just didn't want to be involved because they thought it was a private issue. Now, the other fact of this is that online violence is also a real thing, and it's making perpetrators have huge access to potential victims. And what we're hearing is that what starts in the digital world, coercion, targeting, either stalking, cyber stalking, most of the time does end up becoming real crimes in the material world.
There's so many dark angles to this story. This is a difficult issue to think about, to allow to consume your thoughts. Again, you and your team were on this for a year. How did it affect you, change you?
That's a difficult question, Michael, because you're right. The team of Sela Oneko, who was a co-author, Jimmy and John, who were behind the camera and editing, we had to take turns actually looking through the material because this is something that's very confronting, and we're going through it day in, day out, sometimes over long periods of time. And there were tears which we shed because it's very heavy material that we're confronted with. Jimmy, who was one of the editors, had not been to the funeral, but after we finished editing is when he said that he has a very different viewpoint of men himself. But through all this, we kept going back to the reality that we can walk away from it, but the families that we interviewed simply cannot. And this is something that we also have to contend with and deal with. We're still in regular contact with Eunice's family and also Lena as we try and see how the court process is resolved. But the truth is, these are just 2 cases out of potentially hundreds of thousands in the country that we might never be able to hear about.
Really appreciate your reporting, your perspective, your stamina. Our deep thanks to Edith Kamani. We're going to end it there, but be sure to check out our other stories on dw.com/Africa or on social media. See you soon.